Luigi Mangione, the alleged killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, wanted to send a message to the world. That much is clear. Police found bullet casings with the words deny, defend, and depose. His backpack was found in Central Park, stuffed with Monopoly money. When police arrested him at a Pennsylvania McDonald's, he was in possession of a manifesto that read in part, quote, "I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. These parasites had it coming." Even louder than this message, though, was the public response to the cold-blooded, broad daylight murder of a CEO. From TikTok to Facebook to the Ben Shapiro comment section, Americans of all political ideologies and backgrounds came together to express their utter and complete disgust at a healthcare system that they experience as violent, which treats their lives as just as disposable as Mangione treated Brian Thompson's life. Their disgust, by the way, it's well-founded. Here in the U.S., we don't really have a healthcare system. We have a profit-maximizing, price-gouging system. Your health is at best incidental. Among wealthy nations, we spend more per capita than any other nation by a long shot. We should have the best healthcare on the planet and the healthiest population. But of course, the reality is out of these same wealthy nations, we also have the lowest life expectancy. The UK is the second worst, and their citizens live on average nearly half a decade longer than we do. We are having entire years of our lives stolen from us. Now, sometimes the problems with having a system built around profit instead of around health can feel kind of abstract. But a recent New York Times investigation into methadone clinics dug deep into the way that these sick incentives can play out in the real world. These clinics are a sort of microcosm of the way that profit motive perverts every corner of our healthcare system. So here is that backstory. Acadia Healthcare is a large hospital chain started by a former financier that has aggressively moved into the addiction recovery space in recent years after purchasing a for-profit chain of 165 methadone clinics from the private equity firm Bain Capital. Between the financier founder and the private equity connection, I'm sure you already feel really great about the care that these chains provide. Now, at these methadone clinics, recovering opioid addicts can receive a daily dose of the narcotic methadone to help curb their cravings for more damaging opioids like heroin and fentanyl. These clinics are, of course, heavily regulated by state and federal authorities. But, according to the Times, Acadia uses all kinds of lies and tricks to skirt the rules and to juice their profits. As reported by the Times in their piece, Fraud and Fakery at the country's largest chain of methadone clinics, Acadia's clinics aggressively push quantity over quality. The more patients they take on and the more cups of methadone they hand out, the greater their insurance and federal government reimbursements. Now, I'm sure you can imagine the sort of behavior that this drives. Staff are overloaded, they're underpaid, they have massive caseloads that they cannot possibly handle. They take on patients who are not even opioid addicts to be able to fill out their quotas. They routinely falsify records in order to meet federal and state guidelines which require that the cup of methadone come with a certain amount of counseling and therapy. One staff member, for example, bragged that if they even said hello to a patient, they counted that as one of those mandatory therapy sessions. Now, I'll note here an Acadian spokesperson denies these allegations as they operate in compliance with all rules and regulations. The methadone business, though, has proven quite profitable for Acadia, as the federal government has gotten more serious about dealing with opioid addiction following a drug company-fueled addiction crisis. Acadia has seen their methadone clinic profits spike 30%, adding about $3 million in revenue to the larger hospital chain's bottom line each and every year. Their greed-fueled business practices do not end with treating patients like cash cows instead of humans, however. According to the Times, they are working to get their money-grubbing hands on some of the settlement money secured by states and counties nationwide from those big pharma companies like Purdue Pharmaceutical, which helped to create the opioid crisis in the first place. In other words, Acadia is both profiting handsomely off of this epidemic by providing substandard treatment and also trying to bilk the very money that is meant to go to the victims of this epidemic. It is truly sick. This may seem like a long shot, but the effort is already bearing fruit. According to the Times, quote, "This year, for example, the company successfully lobbied the Kansas legislature to allow for-profit companies to receive grants from that settlement money." Christopher Hunter, Acadia's chief executive, has told investors that the settlement funds will be, quote, "a really nice tailwind for the company." Gee, can't imagine why people despise these companies and the people that run them. In addition, they have been busy working the halls of Congress to avoid what would be a deadly threat to their business model, allowing people to avoid methadone clinics altogether and receive their dose from the pharmacy like other medications. Ironically, Acadia has been arguing that this bill should be blocked because of how critical it is to combine methadone with their, quote, individualized care and, quote, gold standard suite of services. You know, the very services that the New York Times found this company was often not actually providing and routinely lying about. So at the nation's largest methadone chain, humans are treated like cattle. They are denied the therapy that could help them with their recovery. Staffers are overworked and put under intense sales-like pressure to deliver numbers. Records are outright falsified and faked in what can only be described as mass fraud. And this is just one little corner of our profit-first healthcare system. It doesn't serve the patients or society. It serves only the corporate executives and shareholders who are at the top of that chain. Now, if you want to see how this plays out in other corners of the healthcare system, you could start by taking a look at the separate investigation from these same New York Times journalists into Acadia psychiatric hospitals. In that expose, you'll learn how they literally trap patients against their will and against the law so that they can maximize insurance payouts. And if that isn't dark enough for you, Acadia employees have been accused by dozens of patients of assault and neglect. A Utah Acadia hospital was closed after state regulators investigated dozens of charges of assault and rape. Tennessee regulators found that Acadia had lied in their medical charts, claiming they checked on a patient every 15 minutes. In reality, that patient wasn't found dead for hours, had already entered a state of rigor mortis. Now, perhaps not all actors in our healthcare system are as negligent, abusive, and fraudulent as Acadia is accused of being. However, this model of abusing patients for profit is in fact exactly what you should expect from the system that we have set up. Every greedy middleman ghoul in the system getting their cut, and patients getting sick and stuck with the bill. New poll from Gallup shows that even before the CEO was slain, Americans were absolutely clamoring for a radical departure from the healthcare status quo. Gallup finds a new post-Obamacare high in support for the federal government guaranteeing a right to healthcare coverage. Only 32% of the country disagrees. And yet, because there is so much money being made, so much cash flowing from those profits into the campaign coffers of DC politicians, healthcare reform has been all but abandoned as a national issue. We went from Bernie pushing Medicare for all, to Biden briefly pretending to fight for a public option, to Kamala crowing about dropping prices for a handful of drugs, with savings only going to Medicare recipients. That's how far we've fallen and how quickly. If Democrats are actually serious about getting back into power and truly delivering for the nation, they will heed the message that was sent loud and clear this week and fight to cut these parasites off once and for all. By making our country more humane, they will save lives, including, potentially, the lives of a CEO or two. And Saagar, I'm kind of...
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them, going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.